Good evening. I'll call to order this meeting of the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board. August 6th, 5:07. Everybody's on board. Mr. Franzuto, can you hear us?
Yes.
Thank you. Can we have an approval of tonight's agenda? Motion, please. Motion's made by Mr. Anderson, seconded by Mr. Bossy to approve tonight's agenda. All in favor, Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
Mr. Bossy, Mr. Brace. Aye. Mr. DeCosta, Mr. Franzuto,
Aye.
chair votes aye. Has everybody had a chance to look at June 4th minutes? Any revisions? Might have a couple of typos in there. But you just glance through it again.
Okay, which one?
June 4th.
Okay,
We'll bundle this up. June 18th. Any revisions, changes to be made? July 16th.
I didn't do that because I wasn't here, so I put that on there because I figured whoever did it.
Well,
No.
is it in print?
Who did it when I was gone?
Well,
No,
we recorded it.
Okay, so I'm not doing the minutes when I'm not here, so I just figured someone was. Okay,
All right, so minutes of June 4th and June 18th. Do we have a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion's made by Mr. Bossy, seconded by Mr. Anderson. All in favor of approving meeting minutes of June 4th and June 18th of 2024. Mr. Bossy.
Aye.
Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
Mr. DeCosta,
Yes.
Mr. Brace,
aye,
Mr. Franzuto.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. We have a Marine Department report.
you don't see it.
Notes. Natural resources, please. Sarah.
Yes, we're in the last few weeks of the indoor part of the hatchery season. Last week, we released 25 million out in the middle of Matticat. And tomorrow is going to be our last scallop spawn. So those will be released 12 to 13 days from tomorrow. And then we'll shift gears and get ready to do our underwater surveys in both Nantucket Harbor, Matticat Harbor, and around Tuckernuck Island as well. We're continuing to bring in our spat lines. Those will continue every 2 weeks through the end of October. We're testing out our bottle upweller system with the 60,000 eelgrass seeds that we collected at the beginning of the season. Our cohogs in our outdoor system are right now in between about 2 to 4 millimeters. So we'll grow those till mid-October when the water cools down, and then we'll plant those out. Let's see. Nantucket Boys and Girls Club is in every Wednesday. We also just finished up our working with the Great Harbor Yacht Club Youth Foundation program, where we help them with a 2-week camp. With all the rain coming this week, it's kind of a perfect scenario for a rust tide bloom, which we haven't really seen in a while in a big way. So I'm anticipating, but hopeful it doesn't happen. But we are going to be sampling and looking for that. So usually in the past, it's happened usually the first couple of weeks of August. Temperatures are warm and following a lot of rain. So that's something that we're looking at. It's not harmful to humans, but it does affect larval and juvenile shellfish. So that's the concern there. It also creates like low oxygen events, wherever the bloom accumulates. And this bloom kind of like moves around a lot and shifts, but we'll see. I have no idea if it's gonna make an appearance or not.
Upside is right now.
it's northeast, so it keeps the dip down. There's a lot of bunker in Portland Bay. I don't know about the harbor. But they seem to need a lot.
Okay. That's good. If it's ingested by shellfish, it's just not nutritious, so it's like empty calories, so they end up like being nutrition deprived, coming out of August when the temperatures are high. I'm not really sure, but usually like when the when we have, rain fall events that are greater than like 4 inches, there could be a preemptive closure for shellfishing. So I talked to the state this week and they said they were still deciding on whether they were going to implement a closure before the weekend or not. So they didn't give me a yes or a no, but they were talking about it. The DMF microbiology testing, they come out usually monthly and do fecal coliforms in a variety of areas in the harbor. I just talked to Florencia from Human Resources at the town, and those results are going to be posted on the Natural Resources Water Quality page for people to access as they come in. And this winter we'll work on the backlog of everything that hasn't been posted before. And one announcement, Tuesday, August 13th from 1 to 3 p.m. With Egan Maritime at the Shipwreck Museum. There's a regional aquaculture symposium that they're hosting. That's going to include a panel discussion on aquaculture, and then some vendors there to talk about, you know, farming and propagation and hatchery stuff. I think they've enlisted a kelp farmer from the Cape that will be there. I know Emma Greenbeach from the Vineyard, who runs the Martha's Vineyard Shellfish Group nonprofit, will be there to talk about their program as well. So if anyone's free from 1 to 3, it's on Tuesday afternoon. And that's all I have until we talk about Vineyard Wind.
Got a
Thank you.
couple more on there.
Please do,
So just
Mr. Carl.
more public opportunity for folks. Again, hopefully this word got out. It's kind of short notice. Tomorrow on the 7th, down at the Whaling Museum, is the downtown resilience planning open houses. There's 2. There's one from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
tomorrow.
and then there's another one from 5:30 to 7. It's the same. So if you go to one, you don't have to go to both. It's the same, but it's more of a kind of go at your own pace through and a little bit of update on some of the resiliency projects that are happening down there, looking for some public feedback on some of those. But that's an opportunity that's available. If you have kids, there are kid activities that you can dump them off if you want to go around, and I believe there's going to be free food too, so more encouragement for folks.
Did you say the Dreamland?
Nope, at the Whaling Museum.
Whaling Museum, thank
It's in
you.
the big great hall there. Second one, not for a different project, but I don't want to steal anyone's thunder from coming later. The harbor plan has gotten to a stage where they've kind of completed all of the draft objectives and kind of goals. Maintaining some of the same sections as the last plan and adding on a new section for resiliency specifically. But there's going to be kind of a public presentation. That's kind of a first discussion of those on Monday, August the 19th from 4 to 6 p.m. It's going to be a hybrid meeting out at the public safety facility downstairs, but you can always hop on by Zoom. Again, it's just a chance for people to hear things and share their thoughts. Process wise for that whole plan, that will go through, but it still has to go through its formal public hearing and adoption process. So there will be a number of other opportunities if you can't make that one to share that. We're hopefully going to get all of that posted up this week for people to be able to see. We just didn't want to overlap with the thing tomorrow to cause confusion that there was a separate meeting. So on Thursday that will probably go up.
Kim Starbucks sent out
Yep.
an email.
Kim has been sending it out to everybody for that there. And then the last thing I want to kind of put on everyone's radar is the town has also been working on its sediment transport and 10-year dredge planning effort, in an effort to get a 10-year dredge plan. We've completed all the field work for that. I think we're hoping to, in the next month or so, have a number of public forums to get some input on where people that are using the water thinks that dredging is needed. So we can kind of hear from everybody where we are gonna try to prioritize. And put that together. That date's to be determined, but just to kind of throw it on everyone's radar, if they're out and about or out in the water. If there are places in need, please take note, because we're trying to see where that is and try to put stuff in a little bit of an order. So when we try to permit all of that together to expedite that, so we can kind of continually have money put forward towards dredging and dredging, we can move through all those spots efficiently and not have to always do it's gonna be 2 years of permitting. That we can kind of have a plan in place, but there are definitely areas in greater need or lesser need, and some of that will help be determined by areas of public usage and so. Again, that date hasn't been set. We have a lot of projects going at one time, but
Well,
that will happen before the end of the year for sure. So, again, we just are looking for some feedback. I know we get a lot of easy street basins, shallower than it used to be. There's a few other spots around the harbor. Pulpus Harbor entrance channel always seems to be an issue that we get told. So we're just trying to solicit as much input as we can for spots that are priority for public use.
Bob, before I get to you, Jeff, I'm just curious, does the bottom have to be void of any life for it to be?
No, I think for
Disturbed.
the dredge plan, right? I think we obviously want to maintain navigable channels, and that's something that Sheila's helping us figure out. If there are areas that are truly in need, we need to identify that. Because if we do need to do mitigation or some sort of like eelgrass mitigation for having to disturb an area, we need to be able to kind of incorporate that into planning. So if there's part of that will kind of go together with where we think that.
So there would be coordination if eelgrass is gonna be disturbed, you'd
Absolutely.
possibly try to transplant some of that.
Transplant, move,
Yeah.
mitigate through other means. There's a lot of choices, but I think if we know those areas are slated up for dredging, or we have a target area too, we can try to also add that between the efforts of our office, the land council, a few other ones, to say, we need to mitigate 20 acres of eelgrass over the next 5 years. How are we gonna do that? And submit that as part of that package, and then at least have a plan for how that's gonna go.
Bob,
Two questions. One. State really anticipating 4 inches of rain in this event
Not in one day, but I
through
see.
the next 5 days. So I haven't seen that in the forecast. So that's not really. The dredge plan.
Yes, sir.
This is not a navigable waterway, but I want to make sure that this gets put on the dredge plan, if it's not possible. Is the entrance to the ditch going into Long Pond at the boatyard, all the way down the second bridge and both sides of the first bridge. I was on the select board when I brought this up. They spent $100,000 on a study with SMAS to say, yes, if we dredge this, it will help the health of the pond, get the TMDLs down in that pond. And if you go down by the boatyard right now, the water is so shallow there, it's less than a foot deep. And that's part of why there's no velocity coming in and out of that pond. Andy, anyone that's been here long enough to remember when we used to actually net herring in those ditches. That first bridge ditch on the dump side of that bridge had so much current flow through it that you could not hold a net to the bottom. And there is no current flow through there at all. The same thing at second bridge, and the same thing at third bridge. And the problem is if there's not enough depth in that end of the creek.
Get it in the creek.
Uncle Martin told me that he just sold his boat and had to get a smaller boat because in front of his pier, there was so much sediment buildup on his dock that he can't get his boat into his dock at half tide or less. So that whole end of the creek is very, very.
Filled in.
Now, I know at some point it's gonna start to become an issue for Connecticut Marine, but this is an issue for the town because there's money from the state to improve herring runs, and this is a major herring run. And I've talked to some of the state guys about this, and they said, yeah, we know it's a good herring run, but you know, we don't have any input. So I think this, as much as it's important to keep Opus Harbor open in this area and that area open, this needs to be a high priority for us, because this will not only help the heron and the eels and the blue claws and everything else that comes in out of that pond, but it'll also help the TMDLs, which is one of our ultimate goals. And I wonder how much of that nutrient loading that's in that pond ends up in Madigan Harbor. And if we were able to increase the velocity coming in out of that pond, how it would only help the health of that harbor. So I would like to have really on the dredging plan.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Franzuto.
Yeah, Bobby's right. We've never taken advantage of the herring money. We've never even applied, and we should do that, especially for that entrance into that pond. The second thing is, Jeff, is there I don't know what the proper word is, consideration or understanding or whatever, that the sandbank has been established and permitted, and that some of this dredge material can be used in the future for beach nourishment and stored and used in the future?
I think that's the plan. I think depending upon the order where it's gonna get ultimately stored is a little bit of the question, but I think the plan is to try to beneficially reuse as much of it as possible.
All right, well, when we got the permit, the last set of permits, um, the it was approved by the state and the Corps to have the sandbank, to be able to sell excess sand and to use it for future town projects for nourishment. I just don't want that to be forgotten, that's because sometimes you don't have a an upland storage area immediately adjacent to where you're dredging. And a case in point is Pulpus Harbor, where we barged it, dewatered it, and then stored it at the DPW and then sold it. So I don't want that to be forgotten, that's a choice.
No.
And that money is earmarked specifically to go to fund future dredging.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you, Dave. Mr. Brace.
Bobby, do you think it's shallow there because of what's coming out of the pond, or do you think it's
I'm not sure.
wrapping around and
I'm
coming
not
in?
sure where it came from, Peter. I mean, I just know that I hadn't been out there. Jeff knows I was concerned about first bridge, and how shallow it's that. I know
Yeah.
a lot of it's come from the road and just erosion of the bank. And it was brought to my attention that how shallow the end of the creek is there. And I walked out there and I couldn't believe how shallow it's not. Now, I don't know if it's coming out of the creek or where it's coming from, but I can't remember in my lifetime that we've ever dredged that. And maybe part of the problem is that the velocity coming out of first bridge and second bridge, because there's just not a lot of water flowing out of that pond, has decreased. So then the sediment buildup has happened up on that end of the ditch as well. I'm not sure, to be honest. But it definitely has built up that we need to, it doesn't appear like it's coming from the bank or anything there. It may be coming out of the pond. But it just amazes me how shallow it's gotten up on that end. I mean, you can drive over that third bridge, you can look down, it's only like this deep.
And I don't think it's affecting the Clark population, because there's certainly a
No.
lot of people there
Yeah.
pulling them out of there.
Grabbing, but the biggest thing for me is the heron, and I know
Right.
the amount of heron going in and out of that pond, especially into the head of the pond, there's
Minimum.
hardly any. And,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because they can't smell the fresh water. The heron that do go in the pond, the few that do go now seem to go up, they turn and they go up into, Massasoit into the pond.
White Goose Cove.
Yeah, but that, in front of Linda Lawrence there in the spring, you drive down there at 5 o'clock in the morning, you look down that bank and there'd be nothing but heron ringing as far as you can see. You don't see any heron there now. And it's so shallow that the birds just sit there and pick every few that come through. But there's no current through there either. There's hardly any current. It used to be. a
It
lot.
needs to be dredged out, even if you
You go
take
to-
the albacore and set it there for 12
You go
hours.
to the Cape and you look at these beautiful heron runs that they.
Oh, my God.
It's crystal clear water and there's 1,000 herons sitting
Yeah.
in these pools. And yet we go to our ponds and they don't look great. And the other issue, which has nothing to do with the heron, is the way the town fixed that bank with the koi bags, or whatever it is they stuck there. Now you can't launch a boat into that pond. That's considered a great pond. You're supposed to have access to it. So there's all kinds of questions. What if I want to put a duck boat in, on how do I do it? Do I drive over the koi bags? And really what needs to happen there is that needs to be riprap. And they put a Cape Cod berm in front of that road so the sediment doesn't run into it and that will take care of it. I mean, because all that sand that's there is from the road. It's run down the road and into the pond. And if they riprap it with big gravel and they put a Cape Cod berm there from the bridge down, it would take care of 99% of it. So, I don't know if it's a DPW thing or if it's a town select board thing or, whose problem it is. And part of the land is owned by the Lauren Foundation. But it is a great pond, so there's supposed to be access to it regardless of who owns it.
I don't think they own that far around.
I think they own, I know the other side of the pond, of the Madigan side of the ditch.
Fisher's
It's
Landing.
owned by Fisher's Landing.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. I really like to see that pond fixed because I know when I was a kid, and not even that long ago, 15 years ago, there were a lot of heron in that pond and eels coming out of that pond. I don't know if anybody even tries to eel in that pond anymore, but there were thousands of pounds of eels that came out of that pond.
Mr. Chairman, one more question.
Okay,
Have we ever opened? Have we ever opened the pond to the ocean at the other end?
Long Pond?
Yeah,
No,
Yes.
Give it another storm.
It has,
No, but-
Breaching on the South Shore.
but the improvement to navigation and water quality to dredge that entrance where Bob's talking about, it dovetails, it fits right into whatever Jeff's permitting's trying to do. So it's just one of those things that, shouldn't be forgotten in the list.
And then, way to do it the most efficiently and cheapest way. We've all been in Hyannis Harbor where we've seen the little barge with the mini excavator on it, pulls itself around the harbor. If we were to build a little barge. Town were to build a little barge or have somebody build a barge that the DPW could park a mini excavator on, they could literally pull themselves down the creek and dredge that out. Now, the issue would be, what do we do with the fill? Years ago, when we used to do the mosquito ditches, Dave, you remember, we used to just pile it on the bank. And then there was issues about, we can't do that, but.
But you can excavate that stuff either directly into a truck or into a disposal site, dewater it, and then store it and move
And
it.
I would,
Depending on the quality and the fines and how silty it is and all that other stuff. But yeah, it certainly can be done.
I would also think that Madigan Ring would be more than happy to help us facilitate getting that stuff out of there because it is gonna start to become an issue for them. And I know, at First Bridge, when we went through this the last time, Billy Cassidy told me he would volunteer to donate his excavator to just put it on the bank there. And he can reach out about 70 feet with that excavator and dig enough of a trench there to clear that out. So I think it's just a matter of getting on the queue, getting it permitted, and then.
Yeah, if we can open Sackage and Hummock Pond with an excavator, we can certainly do this. Certainly do something like this.
all right, so there's going to be a meeting announced for these ideas. I'd like to suggest that the board, jot down your ideas and bring them to the meeting. There's been a lot of discussion on dredging. We had it on our agenda for a couple of years. And as far as the harbor plans go, I think all of us have met with Kim Starbuck and shared our thoughts and ideas, and we have representative there as well, Mr. Franzuto, and on all of the meetings. So if we could move forward, anything else, Mr. Carlson,
For me,
that's it for you.
correct.
Okay, any other questions on natural resources report, comments, questions for either Tara or Jeff? We'll move on to old business. Terry, you said we wouldn't hear from you till Vineyard Wind, but we have shellfish regulations and you have a stack
I'll
of
make
stuff
this- I'll
there.
make this quick.
All right.
It looks daunting, but it's not. If anyone needs a copy of the edited regulations, I left all the track changes to the side so you could see what the discussions surrounded. And I will email this for those of you that don't like paper versions. Okay, so I just made a summary page that talked about the wording changes that we went over and then highlighted most of the additions. Hopefully I didn't miss any that would be of interest. And then if you flip the page, there were some changes that were made. And I put whether those were suggested by SHAB or whether they were initiated by NRD. And then there were a few items that I felt would probably hold the process up no matter what, where further discussion is needed on some of the items. So I was talking to Jeff earlier, and since, you know, we don't have a lot of meetings and the scald season is coming up, we discussed that it might be important to do this in phases and fast track perhaps what might be, or what I've heard could be the most important thing, which is having the select board have the ability to adjust the bushel limit based on the surveys. So if that is agreeable, that is probably what we are going to assemble for the next 2 weeks and get in front of town council and the board for approval prior to the season. And I think if there are other things that you think need to be fast tracked, we probably need to know ASAP. But other than that, I think some of these things can happen during the season, and some of the recreational things can even happen, you know, this winter. As far as approving everything, Jeff and I were thinking that, you know, to get it all written down and codified, that perhaps April, the end of April or beginning April 1st of 2025 would make sense. I think there's quite a bit of work to do on the recreational permitting, reporting, and streamlining that if we want to go online or have like a what do you call them, QR code for reporting and stuff. I think, you know, having some small group discussions on some of that would be the way to go. So I'm happy to run through the additions and the changes real quick, or you guys can do it on your own and then just email me back what you think. But I think if you guys agree that moving forward with getting the Board of Selectmen to have the ability to change the bushel limit during the season and prior to the season, based on what we perceive the supply to be, then I think we should get on that sooner than later.
I don't think we need to go over all of this. This looks wonderful. You've put this together and this actually feels kind of thinner than the old one, so.
Double check.
Smaller.
Double check.
But would you like a vote on that to leave with?
Jeff and I were talking about, you know, the fact that we are gonna have to put this in front of town council and the select board, and that I don't know that it'll probably have to happen before the next meeting, so. I don't know how you would like to review what we put in front of them, or if you. Want us to go ahead and take the initiative and do that without your review, it's up to you.
Would this just be for the variable?
It would be for the variable based on the surveys.
Right. I'd make a motion at this meeting to go ahead and give these guys our endorsement to go ahead and put that forward with the last select board there.
I'll second that.
So when you say based on the surveys, you're talking about the spring surveys, right? Not
We're
what's,
actually talking about the September survey, so it would be a fairly quick turnaround. So we're
okay,
slated to do in the first 2 weeks of September and hopefully have that information for
because it's,
November 1st.
okay,
Any other questions or discussion?
yeah, and so. Are there any items for the recreational season that you think should be fast tracked? Or are they all good to go for another year?
I think they're good to go to discuss this winter and finalize. I don't think there's anything pressing on it, except the only thing that I'm not happy with has to do with the reporting and the fact that there's no reporting when you go buy your license on what you did the previous year. And so I think that needs to be changed.
I agree, but I think it really needs, we need to somehow get this done online, like, when I buy a new hunt license every year, when duck stamp, I have to do a hip report. And it's just a simple survey, and that,
I agree.
I
But
agree
how-
with you, though. We should have
Yeah.
kind of some type of estimation, and if we can figure out a way to do it online, it would be.
Between now and when there's the rush to buy the licenses, recreational licenses, how tough would it be to come up with just a little sheet that would be handed out and the person who's selling saying, before we give you your license, can you please estimate right here how much you took last year? That wouldn't be tough at all. You might get some participation.
We could capture some of it, yes.
As soon as we start having that in people's minds, and then those people that were informed and wrote down, then when they go out, they're going to be thinking about it.
Scott?
We still need a mechanism for catching people like myself who have lifetime
Right.
pass, so I'm not gonna go and report anything unless I have a push to do it. So I would say there's
We need
a
like a
good number
mailing.
of people
Yeah.
that you see with the white badges.
And it's also creating just another quagmire of paperwork. Now we've got 1,000 pieces of paper that people filled up, someone has to collate and go through.
Yeah.
Where I think at this point, we could just, until we come up with either a QR code or an online thing, we can just say, we have 1,200 licenses, and we figure based on JC counts how many people are on the water, for the first 2 years, okay.
What's the average catch looking like?
Exactly.
But again,
That's sounds great, like you said, but now all of a sudden there's 800 pieces of paper filled out, somebody's gotta go through them all, somebody's gotta list them.
Instead of doing that, just have the person who's giving out the license say, how many did you get last year? And have them write it down in a logbook, then there's not all the, I don't know, it's just gotta be some way that we don't have to wait till next year to try it.
I think we can figure out something in the short term with the
Yeah.
long term.
All right,
The motion's just to deal with.
Yeah.
the variable.
kind of discussing it. What about adding the reduction of apprentice time? As far as fast tracking?
I did put that in there as a change, that has not been discussed internally. Among NRD, but
Okay.
Jeff, we changed it to 25 days, 5 weeks instead of 40 days, which is 8 weeks.
All right, so at the moment, we have a motion made by Mr. Bossy, seconded by Mr. Anderson, to give our approval for NRD to go before the select board, to allow the select, or to ask the select board to be able to change livings for
Grant
scholars.
themselves the ability to change
Yes,
those.
thank you.
Well,
If there's no more discussion,
Mr. Chairman, but by what time do you need us to email you with what we think should be fast tracked?
Probably Jeff's mentioned that we should have this to the select board in 2 to 3 weeks, so I would say
As soon as possible,
ASAP.
within that period of time, okay?
thank you, Peter.
I would say for fast track stuff, the simpler the better.
Mhm.
Gives
Yeah.
you more things to chew on. It
Yeah.
just slows it down. So,
Sounds like we should simply stick to the limit request.
I don't think that's gonna, I think that we are still pushing things through. We're not gonna delay it, but I just wanna make sure that that one thing that I've heard over and over gets.
Well, it's certainly been an issue, it seems, every year, and whether everybody agrees on the same timing is another thing, but to have the ability for it to be done faster than what seems to have been able in the past would be wonderful. So if there's no more discussion, we'll take a vote on this motion. All in favor, Mr. Bossy?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Brace?
All right,
Mr. DeCosta?
I'm gonna abstain because most of this was done before I was on the board and I haven't had a chance to read it, so I'm just.
Well, we're just doing one thing here.
This is
This is
not-
just. Go ahead.
This is to send these changes.
No, one change immediately, which is to allow the select board to be able to change the.
The limit?
Oh,
Right,
sorry,
the
I
variable.
agree.
Yeah.
Sorry.
the one
I
minute,
thought it was-
yeah.
I'm sorry. I
No.
thought we said
You got
this-
time to look at the
Okay,
whole
I
thing.
was like, I haven't read this yet. You got it? Yes, yes.
Okay,
I agree.
Mr. Franzuto?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well.
Sorry.
Can
Thank
Mr. Chairman, can somebody
Dave.
remind me what we agreed or what we talked about or what we agreed upon about the reduction of the apprentice time? Did we cut that to 20 days? What did we? agree?
25.
25.
And it's what now?
40.
40, right? Okay, so we had talked about 25, right?
And if you want to discuss this some more, would we
No,
have?
not
no.
tonight, but I still
Yeah.
think that's a good discussion, and I think we ought to eventually do that, either 20 or 25. But thank you.
I think 25 is, I don't know if I'd go down to 20, but like Mr. DeCosta mentioned, when we spoke about this at a previous meeting, how long it takes to get those 40 days in. It's a considerable amount of time considering weather, considering a 5-day fishing week.
No, I
So,
totally agree.
okay,
Totally.
Tara, do we have any more discussion on shellfish regs?
I think I would like everyone to review and email me back.
Okay,
And if people have questions, they can feel free to email
Review
either Terry,
this or
the big nasty.
this.
Both.
This is,
Mostly this 2-page document has all the changes and everything.
okay,
There may be some minor edits and wording in here that we'll go through.
Like
okay.
the footnotes.
And if I may too, because this came up during Concom regulations, don't worry about the numbering being wrong right now. Because with stuff coming in and out, the numbers will change. So if you look at it and the numbers look crazy, or the reference in the regulation doesn't match up exactly, if the text is right, that's okay, and we'll get the numbering set when everything's set.
thank you, Jeff. On behalf of the board, I think the rest of the board would agree. Tara, you've really kept all of this. We've had a lot of back and forth on this, a lot of suggestions thrown at you. You've taken a lot of notes and you've come back with a very organized document here. So thank you very much. Moving forward, if there's no more discussion on shellfish regs. Is there anything we need to discuss on the Petrol Landing letter? Mr. Brace forwarded to us the letter from the land bank. It's kind of on the shelf again at the moment. They're busy with other matters. anything you want to add to that, Mr. Brace?
No, I would just say, I don't think any of us are gonna forget about it, so we're
Yeah.
gonna bring it up when it's time, but
And it sounds like when they bring it up, they're gonna notify us as well.
I know Jessie pretty well, and
Yeah.
I think that, you know, she's not gonna let it go, but on the other hand, if we keep bothering her, they're gonna be like, oh, God, you know.
Squeaky wheel.
You know, we're gonna always be that squeaky wheel, but, you know, we know where they stand now, so we don't need to go after them until, plus there's a house in the way, so, you know, they got
They-
other things going on.
They put it in place.
Yeah, they did,
Yeah, yeah,
but still, it's
Right.
not gonna get done
no,
yet.
no,
Anyway.
but, and it would be good, at their convenience and ours really, to be able to meet with the land bank.
Yeah,
All of us as a commission and, or as a board and meet with the land bank. That, I think that would be very helpful to be able to, toss around our ideas with them in person. So, if we can keep that in mind and possibly, you know, talk to Jesse if you could about being able to organize that
yeah,
when it works for them, and then we'll see how it works for us.
I don't think it'll work for them until that issue is in play and okay, we're ready and we wanna talk to you guys, we keep pushing for it. It's not gonna matter, we talk to them now, it might be a whole different commission, so,
Hmm.
but like I said, I don't think there's anyone home. You forget about Tetra Landing, so our favorite topic.
Thank you, Mr. Brace. Any other discussion? Mr. Bossy, thank you for, working and reworking that letter to the land bank. Health of the harbors, pollutants and microplastics.
I'm still continuing to study what's a lot of information. So where I'm coming away with more is that there is no specific test that meets every requirement for every type of shellfish. You may have one lab that comes in to talk about scallop and how things do or don't interact from a microplastics area. You have oysters, you have conch, you have everything. So it's interesting that even the regular industry starts to say that it's a problem to the extent that nobody is qualified to become experts in one lab. So you have to, it's almost like dissect it
Hmm.
and try to identify who would be willing to look at each type of shellfish or fish. To analyze if there really is a problem or how bad the problem might be. Yeah, my fear is if I don't keep pushing the issue along here, we'll be 20 years down the road talking about the same thing with nobody caring. I think what's gonna end up, I'm gonna probably come back with another type of presentation. We have to do a public outreach. Because pollutants and plastics are not going away. What they classify as a microplastic, anything under 5 millimeters, which is the size of an eraser on a pencil. So, and then it only gets smaller from there. I mean, half the stuff you can pick up in the sand, you could probably find plastic in almost all the sand out on the beaches. So,
Or that.
yeah, I mean, and the other problem we have is that we could police it here on the island, but everything that comes up on the shore washes up into the streams and everything is a problem. So it's not just a land-based problem, it's stuff coming off of boats. People out there on the beaches not caring and just letting it go. So, yeah, I'm gonna continue to look and see if I can identify some more key areas. You know, Peter, in your blue book, you did a great job of an educational section. I just think we have to figure out how to expand.
Yeah, if you could get I don't want to malign the land bank, the land council, but if they can, we can print that up and send it to more people.
Sometimes they're just pushing the issues to try to come up with a resolution. I mean, every time I walk the beach, I got a contractor back with me and I always come back with basically more than I wanted to come back with.
How many balloons they pick up loading a week?
Yeah. All those Mylar balloons are not coming from here.
No, they're all
Coming
down
from the mainland.
Midwest or something. Graduation.
Who's this? The wedding season, right behind.
So I'll have a lot more in September.
Scott, thank you. Any other discussion on pollutants and microplastics for this particular topic under health of the harbors? New business. Health Department report on Nantucket oyster caused illness. We don't have the health inspector here with us. Was it he that
Sean
requested this to be on
The next
the
agenda,
agenda?
he said 2 weeks, because I told him that we met every 2 weeks, but I
Mhm.
forgot to tell him that we take off,
Mhm.
in July and August.
Well, and we can talk
So-
at the end of the meeting if we want to have another meeting in August as well, before we adjourn. But
Love to know more about it, but really, it's not a whole lot to read. It'll say you.
well, it's on our agenda and we've been sent the reports and if there's anything we can discuss so that we have a little more familiarity here, tonight, it certainly can't hurt. We have a couple of oyster farmers with us tonight if there's anything they'd like to add, seeing as you're here, I'm more than happy to entertain that.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Britton,
for Sean's part, he just wanted to inform us.
yes,
He wanted to tell us, because we're the Shellfish Board. I don't think he's looking for a letter or anything like that. He just wanted to make us aware of it.
Hmm.
Have us read the reports and then whatever happens.
all right,
And what his intent was to read those reports into the record.
okay.
So
Is that your intent here tonight, Sean? Sean had some other things I think he wanted to share with us as well, as far as, finding other acreage possibly, but,
think the Sean that Peter was talking
Different
about is
oh,
the health inspector.
Sean
I'm sorry,
Reed.
I'm
Sean
sorry.
Reed.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
sorry. Well, I'm seeing Mr. Fitzgibbon here as well, so I just, my focus went in that direction. Mr. Anderson,
I just question, I would like to have the individual here, Sean, who wrote the report. Because it seems to be from the date they say that the oysters were delivered to somebody who came down with a problem. How do you correlate 4 or 5 days later to an event and not know what happened in between? Just the general fairness of how you tag it to one place, 2 places.
well, I think there's a lot of questions in the process, and I think, with the tagging, that certainly helps, but, in one of them, there was mentioned specifically at proprietors about, a mayonnaise sauce being involved as well. So, but where there are 3 different locations, and it sounds like the same illness contracted, answers need to come from the specialists that we rely on in this. Anything from natural resources that you want to share at this point?
I think I'm happy to let Mr. Reed
Yeah,
go over that stuff. That's
Okay.
something that's more public health domain.
all right. Anything from the public on this at this point? There will be a chance in the future. All right, if there's nothing else, we'll move forward.
wait,
Yes,
for the two oyster farmers here, did they have anything to say?
I think I gave that opportunity.
Okay,
Did I not? If not, if you want to wait until the health inspector's here, that's fine as well. And, if there's anything else they'd like to talk about not related to this, we'll bring it up,
Andy.
public comment. Mr. Fitzgibbon,
Anything you'd like to know?
no, I just want to make sure you guys, you're both here, so I figured you might have something to say about it, that's all.
I would be happy to enlighten you with any details that I'm aware of, if you're unaware of the situation, but I have nothing to say, all right?
Okay,
thank you. All right, so we'll move forward, to discussion on Vineyard Wind. Our last meeting, there were 4 of us here in attendance. The topic was, fresh and still should be fresh. I think, our concerns, for the most part, were that, the select board is, giving Natural Resources Department the green light to do whatever they can to monitor our water quality, not only around the island, if necessary, but in our harbors especially. There's been a lot of tide changes between then and now, and there's a lot of curiosity whether any pieces, and of course, it would probably be down to micro pieces by the time it works its way around into the jetties, but and
Not micro,
yeah, yeah,
sorry.
Mr. Anderson.
I got this off of the east bank side of, I'll call it the Bull and Madigan Harbor. Just past Warren's Landing before you come up the stream that comes in here. About half buried, well, more or less buried. All I saw was like the top piece. And I just me picking up garbage off the beach and when I realized what it gets floods. I says, you know, if I don't take it, who else is gonna get it? Because it's buried in eelgrass. For the most part. Not yet. I will. I'm going back there to see with a rake, what might be under some of the more eelgrass, because as the tides push in, where this is, it's really blowing through the cut between Tuckernuck and Smith Point. So it's almost like a direct push into that side of the harbor.
What was your question again, Mr. Bossy?
I asked if you reported it.
Gotcha. Oh. It's heavier than I imagine.
Good.
I have-
No, that's
I have
good,
it
because it's important for
identified.
them to get out, they have to be out there, so.
But again, my whole thing is if we don't enlist more of the general public. Or give them some, give us some type of training mechanism, which I don't think you really need to do for this part of it. That the stuff's just gonna sit out there and cull into microplastic and microdebris.
All right, before we get too far into discussion, I'd love to hear from Natural Resources and what you've been. What select board has shared with you, what type of green lights they've given you or requested of you for water quality testing.
I think that I've learned a lot about microplastics since this has happened. It's not in our wheelhouse typically, and we didn't have a framework of response developed for an event like this. So we're learning a lot along the way. So I have consulted with some industry experts that deal with microplastic and shellfish health or microplastic and I guess shellfish ingestion, and water quality, and gotten some opinions on what they think we should be doing as a town for sampling. I've also talked to the DMF, and Emma, our water quality specialist, has talked to the EPA, and it seems that there isn't a lot of standardized testing that is done because there's not a ton that is known about the effect of microplastic and nanoplastics on shellfish. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't sample for them. So the one thing that we've come up with without guidance is that there is a UMass study that has been ongoing since 2018, studying samples of water from 3 sites on Nantucket, actually 4. Surfside Beach, Madigan Harbor, Nantucket Harbor, and later on, Cascada was added, or off of Cascada. And so we have done 2 rounds of sampling for that to mimic the microplastic study that UMass Boston has done. And so that's the only baseline that we have for Nantucket related to microplastics. And based on that study, what they found in, Surfside Beach, which is the ocean, is that it's similar to the global average of what they're finding in microplastics. What they're finding in Nantucket Harbor and Madigan Harbor are more numerous than what's in Surfside. So what we're putting into our harbor in forms of fiberglass boats microplastics ourselves are higher than what's going on out there in the ocean right now. So our sampling, we're gonna be able to see if there's a change in concentration in microplastics. Could be attributed to, vineyard wind or could not be. But the key would be to identify what those microplastics are. So we're looking at what that analysis is gonna cost and if the town would desire us to move ahead with that. But we have the samples taken and processed. So we just need the decision on what they want, if they want to go ahead, getting a contract and getting them analyzed. So we're waiting to hear on the federal response and what they're doing, which I heard is rigorous and thorough as far as testing goes. And so right now we're just we want to make sure that we're not being redundant and using town labor to do something that isn't going to give us the results, that the town might be looking for. So Jeff,
Okay.
if you want to fill in anything, that's kind of where we're at.
I think the other thing that we did very early on is we kind of took a really broad approach to trying to engage, obviously the team from UMass who had done that specific study, but also, we reached out to Mass Coastal Zone Management and DEP and tried to bring in everything from not just microplastics, but also looking at, toxicology and what could be possibly like sloughing off or leaching off these materials, getting the MSDS sheets that we received to that team of people to start looking at, and then also, even as recently as this week, having meetings with, folks from the DEP and folks from marine fisheries and folks from the EPA to find out what they're doing, but for us to also be able to try to build a little bit of a network of experts in these specific materials and areas that can provide us, a third-party review for us to be able to say, this is what we've received. Does this make sense, right? Does this seem like it checks out? Does it seem like it's shaped, right? We want to know those answers because unfortunately, we don't carry someone on staff who's an expert in the, what leaches off of a very specific kind of fiberglass into the water. It's not like a general knowledge piece that we tend to specialize in. But what we have been doing is trying to find those people to look at it wherever they are, whether they be in Massachusetts, whether they be in California, wherever we're finding those people to kind of help us do that and kind of stepping through the process that way. So if we do get a study back from, from GE and Vineyard Wind, even if it gets vetted through the EPA, we also might have the potential to have a neutral observer look at it and say, methodology seems sound, test results make sense. In my expert opinion, it seems like it jives. So, we're trying to provide that review as well, and then also be prepared from our end. I think with that, kind of moving forward, one of the things we've been talking about a lot is continuing to do this. It doesn't have to be like a weekly or even monthly, but kind of an annual or maybe every 6 months, kind of maintaining this background on where we are with things like plastics for those 4 locations and kind of dealing with that. So if something does happen again, whether it's from the wind farms or boat, plane, or something else that happens, we have background information going forward that we can be reliant on.
Did Vineyard Winds or GE produce the material safety data sheets? Because it wasn't clear to me whether they actually produced them or is it they say they have them.
They produce them.
They produced them,
Yeah.
and town has possession of them.
Yes, we have those, and we were able, at least from our end, to send those off to our group of people that have been looking at things as well.
Having gone through a lot of product liability type situations, it's important we get that, really understand the makeup of that, because all the other plastics will put in play to muddy the water.
Bob,
I fished there today. I was within quarter mile of the turbine in question. The blade is on the bottom as far as I know. They haven't recovered it. There's still debris hanging off the tower. There's still debris hanging off the lower cage. There's not a vessel within 5 miles of it, except for the survey boats now surveying the water south of the bottom, south of this particular lease for the next group of towers that they plan to put in. There are 6 very large vessels on the northeast corner of the wind farm closest to Nantucket, just on station there. I don't know if they're installing or turbines and blades. It does appear to me, because I went through there the day after the blade broke. It appears to me like there's a lot more turbines and blades up, so maybe they've been still installing. None are turning. Except for one that was slowly turning in the wind like it was in preschool. All the others were locked, but there was one that was just barely turning. But there's no, I didn't see any signs of any clean on that tower. It's all the crap's just still hanging there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when it blows 50 on Saturday out in the south. How much more of that stuff blows off of there, because it's literally hanging by pieces, like cable or whatever. I mean, if you look at this stuff really closely, it's got like,
It's got fibers in it.
not fibers, it's got like a glass.
Grid, yeah.
Yeah, like an epoxy shard in it, and it crumbles, it doesn't. So I don't know what's gonna happen. You know, they said they were gonna get that blade off the bottom. I didn't see any signs of them doing any kind of rush to do it, so in the meantime. I fished there for 5 hours today. It was pretty rough, but I didn't see it. I can honestly say I didn't see any pieces of it floating around, but there's still plenty of it hanging off that tower.
Well, I imagine it's a liability issue to get underneath that, blade still there. I would imagine the first thing they need to do is disconnect the remainder of that
I
blade.
think they're probably
but-
just trying to figure out how they're gonna do it.
Yeah,
What they have to go through is they have to, everybody who's involved in the manufacture, installation, or anything. They have all their contracts, point their fingers which way they want to let it go with, and your product liability case, you have to give it to every party the right to inspect, to analyze this. So they need to put some hard dates out there of like when you need to have an inspection by, and now it's just push that.
And meanwhile, now it's washing up in Rhode Island, Long Island, and Connecticut. So we're not the only ones that can deal with this.
board members,
What are we looking to do?
well, I'd like to kind of, be able to iron that out as well. Honestly, I feel like this board, is, the tip of the iceberg. NP and EDC hasn't addressed this from the beginning. They have no intention to address it now. Of course, the select board, seems to be diligent. I, praise Brooke Moore for her, assertiveness, at the last meeting. She seems, very serious and sincere. But if this is going to, and it's it's an if it's going to continue to be an issue, this is something I would say is in our purview, especially if it's going to make its way around directly into our harbors. Never mind it landing on the beaches of our outer shores. But if it's worked its way into the core of the bay, around Dionis, then it's certainly making its way into the harbors as well. And if any board members have any suggestions, as far as keeping a fire lit, so to speak, if that's what's needed, to the select board. Basically, we're an advisory board to advise the select board on how we feel in a majority fashion. If the board feels the need to do so. So
I think at this point. That we could push this to our first meeting in September. Seems like, as you said, the select board is on this. There's a lot of pressure from outside sources all over the island to stay on this. They're gonna stay on this. I addressed our concerns at the meeting right after the incident. I just think, like you said, Andy, we need to stay on top of it and, I don't think that they're gonna let this go. they indicate concerns, and we're happy to hear that we're testing to see if we have any
Yes.
issues with it.
And to clarify on that, if I may, Tara, so you've already taken some water samples.
We're in our second round of water samples, so I have a copy of the update that I provided on the 30th for the select board, if you'd like to review it. It includes, some of the reasons why I think our shellfish are most likely okay at this current time from this event. I think it's gonna highlight some of the other issues and inputs that we have in our harbor that probably need to be highlighted.
And as far as Vineyard Wind hiring Arcadis, I think you're very familiar with Arcadis, worked together with them with some things at Concom, correct? And some other areas. I'm sure Arcadis has been around here a long time. Jeff, may I ask, have you been in contact in
No.
particular about anything with Vineyard Wind, or if they've been in contact with you, your department at this point? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we've had some contact with Arcadis and discussions with them. Different, I will also make it very clear, very different teams and groups that we work on things like the coastal resiliency plan and things. Arcadis is a large international firm with frankly thousands of employees, so they're pretty big. This is a team that I hadn't worked with anyone before. Again, they were just trying to information share with us and say, this is kind of what we're developing to do. A lot of it for them was looking for data sources for things from everything from if there's anyone that catalogs and documents injured or dead animals on the beaches, who might be doing that, whether they're marine mammals or birds, to, what kind of water quality testing goes around, what data is publicly available, even not related to microplastics, but just water quality in general. So they reached out to us, Natural Resources, to kind of go through anything that they may be looking for, or who on island may have that information, to just trying to circle that up. They're still in the process, a little bit like we are, of putting together a full collection and analysis plan of water and beach and doing things to test that and figure out what they need to be testing for, because obviously if you don't know what you're looking for, you can't simply go out. And I know in our example for our samples, we can't sample for microplastics with the bottles we normally use for water sampling because they're plastic bottles. So we have to use glass, right? So some of that's going on from their end and they're trying to move through. They also have a little bit more of a hurdle to deal with because any of their sampling plans, things that are going on, also need review from EPA, probably from Bessie and Bohm, to make sure that they're up to their standards. They're probably having to develop some sort of quality assurance plan, or QAP as they sometimes call them, to go through and get approved. So it's a little bit more on their end, but they have been in contact with us. They were very, thought they were pretty friendly and professional and seemed to know what they were doing. And again, they're a company of pretty world renowned reputation for doing good work. So I have no doubt Arcadis will do great work for what they're being asked to do. But again, that's also why when they publish a report, we're still looking at, having our network of people that can independently look at that and say, we completely, we reviewed it, methodology was good, analysis seems to be good, conclusions seem to make sense to us, and we think that's there, or these are the questions we have that now as we go into kind of the second round of assessment, these are the questions that we think need to be addressed and things that are there. Provide that, and if that's something that leads to us doing some sampling or some secondary sampling, I think that that's okay. But it's also no sense in doing sampling 2 or 3 times for the same thing if we're all going to get the same results. So it's a little bit of an efficiency thing, but again, they've reached out. We haven't departmentally, I can say, is on that call, there was a representative from PE who was just participating as kind of facilitator in the hiring of those guys, but they essentially let us have a little chat, but we haven't heard from outside of here or some initial contact from, Vineyard Wind didn't participate in that discussion. They let, I think the lady from GE put it best, and Brooke was on the call with us for a little bit, and they said, we're gonna let the scientists talk to the scientists and let you guys do your thing. And hit mute and kind of sat there and waited for the meeting to go through. So, other than that, like I said, most of our contact had a nice call with Dan McKiernan, who's the director of Division Marine Fisheries, offering assistance. Steve McKetta from Coastal Zone Management connected us with the Center of Coastal Studies for some assistance. Really, the state response to us has been a lot of resources our way. We had a nice call with DEP and their toxicology staff, especially related to water toxicology. They're doing kind of independent reviews on everything that are coming through too. So there's a lot of people reviewing things. Just a matter of producing information and collecting things and processing them correctly. So I feel like we're moving through it. I know it's not as fast as everyone always likes it to do, but I think the last thing we want to do is rush and have mistakes that cause bigger problems down the road. So we're getting there.
Well, as far as parallels in testing, in this particular case, Arcadis has been hired by Vineyard Wind. And unfortunately, in the climate of division and even corruption these days, people, I think, from what people are at least expressing to me, having our own independent testing, even if it is, paralleling what Arcadis does, I think a lot of us here on the island are going to feel a lot comfortable if we knew some testing came from NRD as well.
Well, absolutely.
And just to be able to see that comparison is true or not. And like I said before, hopefully the select board is giving the green light to your department to do whatever you may feel is necessary to come to a determination. Mr. Anderson.
NRD have a certified lab. That's the problem. You're getting back to people saying, your lab, done your tests, but where's your certification? Step back up.
I mean, we would not be doing the analysis. We are doing the sample prep.
We hire certified labs.
Farm it out.
Yeah.
It's a lot of times for us, we use places like, for our regular water quality testing, we use UMass Dartmouth and SMass. They're a certified lab. Some of the plastics are through other UMasses, obviously. Universities always work well for us because they have a lot of access to equipment and labor that you just don't pick up off the shelf in some spots. So we'll reach out. And again, some of it is also, if our normal sources that we use don't have that equipment, they probably know the right person to call that does have the equipment. And some of it's getting in contact with that. Some of it for some of the sampling, especially plastics, that's a little bit new. It's not like it's commonplace equipment that everyone has and things that do. So finding time and availability can be a little bit tricky because they also have other projects and things that are going on. So we're kind of moving through that, and hopefully we'll have the select board, like I said, to date has been supportive of us reaching out and collecting that and getting costs and doing that. It's been very good. And I'll even say in our meetings, Brooke has been very good as kind of their point person of saying that the goal of natural resources and our work is first and foremost to be able to say to the residents of Nantucket that we believe these were the impacts, we believe things are safe or not safe. And to know what that is and provide that independent review ultimately to provide some level of comfort to folks who are here or understanding of what reality is.
Thank you, Jeff. Board members, comments, questions?
I just
Dave.
feel good, you guys. It sounds like a great track you guys along with us. I agree with you 100%. And I also agree about that, as Bobby said, about not being on the select board. The reason to push them, I think they are pushing themselves pretty hard right now. And there are a lot of groups pushing them. So I think we keep this on our agenda to look at it. and keep track of what you guys are up to.
If it helps, I've spoken to members to Brooke primarily more in the last like 3 weeks than I have in the last like year and a half for being on the board by like multiple factors. So they've been really engaged and very much like even just at the end of last week, Brooke was like, hey, can you guys meet with these folks on Friday or Monday? And I'm meeting with them on Monday, and before then, 2 days before, is DEP would like to have a chat. Can I set up the Zoom for you guys today or tomorrow? And that's,
Yeah.
and she's been on every one, and they've definitely been very good of kind of driving the wagon pretty hard, so.
Any other board members with comments or questions? I'll take comments from the public. State your name, please.
Veronica Burnett. And I am with the group Act for Wales.
Want to come closer, please? Thanks. We have a microphone over here.
I am with the group Act for Wales, but I wanted to just share a couple of thoughts and concerns that we had as a group. One, I wanted you guys to let you know, I did report this to the hotline, but I did find a piece of debris in the harbor behind 50 Monomoy Road in the eelgrass, probably 6 days ago now. And I called the hotline and told them, and I live on Pond Road and I often walk that way. I haven't seen much, but I saw this one piece was about 8 inches long with the rain foam backing on it. The other thing that we're seeing there a lot is ribbony, kind of white, ribbony. See tons of it on the South Shore beach that's immediately after this, and I'm not even 100% sure it's from the turbine, but it's like white, ribbony. Looks
Let
like
me,
white-
let me stop you right there and refer to either Tara or Jeff about this, because I've noticed that as well. It looks like the same size as seaweed.
Yeah.
When you hold it in your hand, it breaks apart very
and it
easily.
feels synthetic.
Have you seen a sample of?
I
of
haven't,
this?
I would love to see that.
All right.
Brought it, but I could certainly. go ahead,
Oh, that'd be great.
Show me about for you.
I believe that's possibly already been called to Vineyard Wind, and I believe they, at the past select board meeting, you may have been there, that they said that it was a seaweed. But I've been curious as well, whereas I spend a lot of time on the South Shore, and I've noticed a lot of it as well. And I really wanted to just simply write it off in my mind that this is probably a seaweed where it's so easily breakable.
But then
But
I was trying to Google images of white seaweed or, bleached seaweed.
it's certainly pure white. Sorry.
So, anyway, I wanted to bring that up. And on the water quality testing, obviously it's a very complex issue. But I think if these turbines go forward and the projects go forward, of course, my hope is they don't, but that water quality testing needs to become an ongoing thing, and the town might need more resources from the developer for that. Because there's two things. There's something called leading edge erosion that's a pretty big deal in wind turbines, and in salt water, it's gonna be a bigger deal, and you can look up photos of this. But basically, the leading edge of each blade degrades and erodes. And so we now know how that's gonna move. We already knew how it was gonna move in our waters, but now we've seen it. And so it feels more real and tangible, but that leading edge erosion has been an issue in the UK. And there is a study out of Brighton University showing fiberglass in the oysters, shellfish in the vicinity of wind farms there. It's a pretty neat study. It came out in July. I just wanted you guys to know about that, and I think that they're gonna, on this first project, they're gonna spend $8.5 billion building it. And I don't think that they've compensated Nantucket enough for it, but it's gonna be not just an expense right now for this immediate thing or another, accident. I think it's an ongoing thing that we're gonna need to be testing for those kinds of materials in our water going forward. I'm so happy to hear that UMass has been doing it for a while. So that's great. And then somebody mentioned I can assume that the blade is still hanging there,
The blade is gone.
or the remnants of it.
It was remnants. The blade is, I believe the red blade is still on the bottom. I
They-
think they recovered it.
They have the equipment to take those blades down. The ship that they use for it costs $500,000 a day. So they're not gonna get to it until they know if they have to take more down or whatever. So I think they need some pressure in that area.
And I addressed that before, you can't spoil, there's no spoilation of evidence. That's why this process is gonna drag.
Oh, yeah, and that too.
Thank you,
Um,
Scott.
And then I share your concerns about Arcadis. One of their biggest revenue sources is offshore wind. And they are, their client is cheapy, it is not Nantucket. And even though Nantucket separately has a relationship with them, they need us to go away. That's what they're being hired to do, to say that's something that's not concerned. So I just think that our own testing, our own testing system, or even if it's UMass, so something independent, I don't think people will be comfortable with Arcadis. And then I also just wanted to say to Eric, because you said it, there is no reason to believe the feds are gonna be rigorous or thorough. They had loam and marine fisheries were not rigorous and thorough in the permitting of this. They didn't even consider a pollution event in their project documents. It's not even considered. No oil spill response. They just tested their oil spill response plan in May. And they think they get an A plus, but did anyone on Nantucket get notified in May that they tested that? No. So I don't think they're gonna be rigorous or thorough. They need this to go away. They're so far down the road with offshore wind that anything being really wrong is too big. It's an insurmountable problem for them. And I think they're gonna try and get rid of this and get that project as fast as they can.
Thank you,
But I
Veronica.
appreciate it. I mean, nobody expected this. Our group couldn't even have conceived that this could have happened. And Nantucket couldn't, there's no way to be prepared for it, and it's certainly the extra work for it.
Tara,
Yeah, I just wanted to just clarify, I think when I was saying that the feds were being rigorous and thorough, is that I was passing on part of the conversation that I had with the DMF, and that's what they had mentioned. And that conversation circulated around me asking what we should be testing for, and they did not offer any ideas for shellfish. And you know, finding fiberglass and shellfish, I don't think is super uncommon, especially like on Nantucket. I think there's plenty of fiberglass in our water related to moorings and boats, and I think you'll find a lot more fiberglass close to Mattocket Marine. You know, like it just depends on where the concentration is. There are some interest. I did see that paper that you were talking about with fiberglass because someone from the EPA did send it to me. And so I found that pretty interesting. I don't think it was in the US. I think it was done. Yeah. And there was some conversations around whether shellfish ingest or digest fiberglass, and they do, you know, they filter and digest diatoms, which are made of silica and have funky shapes and stuff, so they can bring stuff like that in. But I think that they're also very selective in their food particles, and there's some really interesting papers on that I think you might find interesting, that I'm happy to send to you too. That, but yes, I do agree that we need to continue to do our own testing. I just want to make sure that we're doing the right testing, and it would be nice if there were some other people that, you know, would suggest or confirm that this is the right way that we're going as a town.
Yeah.
So
I think
that's
it's
what we're looking at.
pretty new area.
but you know, having our own independent, as you mentioned, it made me think of, you know, if you were doing a real estate transaction, you know, each party would hire their own lawyer. And a lot of mistakes can be made if both parties use the same lawyer. So, because that lawyer is being paid by one person. most likely, and so the same goes with the water quality testing, and that's a good point. That really solidifies what we're feeling and talking about here, so thanks. Any other comments from the board?
If I can, just one more point of clarity, I think that's why from our end, one of our main goals outside of testing protocol is to build that network of independent reviewers for us, just for that very specific purpose, right? I'll be the first to say we've had great success with Arcadis, but I also know anytime that someone comes in, whether it's an application to the Conservation Commission, whether it's small projects, having a third-party review just to make sure that all the Ts got crossed correctly is something that's important to do. So even if Arcadis comes out with the greatest report that's ever, we're still gonna have people that review it on our behalf that are not that. Because that's how you make sure things are okay.
Thank you, Jim.
And I think Vineyard Wind should be paying or whatever it costs you. I don't know how that
That's
works.
actually the
but-
select board, not us.
I know, but.
That isn't above my pay grade
No, but they-
discussion,
But
but
they should consider that that expense is gonna be coming to town's way.
I would say, I believe, I'm sure most people here are following pretty closely. The select board are having those very discussions about what options are available for them to recoup costs and everything, so. I'm not part of those conversations, so I don't really, I can't update more from that. I do know that they are having.
They're working very hard on it.
This has been kind of a, I don't want to speak for Tara entirely, but for us and our staff, it's pretty much been a maintain normal operations, and then anything else that was slated to be done that wasn't ready is on hold until this is under control for primarily for Tara and Emma. So, it made very clear that it's a high priority for us to get
Glass
this done.
dogs are heavy too.
Yeah.
What was that?
The glass, they're heavy.
Thank you, Jeff, for that.
Wish we had all better news, or
Right,
this wouldn't happen at all.
Yeah, right.
thank you. Anything else from the board? Vineyard Wind. See Mr. Pronk is not with us. He may have had to comment, but had to leave. If there's nothing else, public questions and comment. Anything from the public tonight? Sean, anyone?
Well, John, come up here so we can hear you.
I know it's not on your guys' agenda, but this is a request that I've submitted to NRD and to DMF to give them a heads up about, and it's my understanding it has to go through your guys' provision and approval. I would like essentially just, to be very simple about it, to use the overwintering site, 2-acre site, and if it's possible, to extend that site up to the shoreline. As I had been using for the last couple of years before the issue arose earlier this summer. Separately but related, there's a lot of benefit to be gained by using that site. And that's just basically, that's what I'm asking for, is to change the local bylaw as it is, that it's only for overwintering use, and if possible, or if necessary, to request a benefit survey through the DMF to approve the 25-yard gap between the long-term coordinates and the shoreline, the tidal space there. Pretty simple.
Okay, so I'm sorry you're not on the agenda tonight. I thought we were kind of waiting for more information. You've put together some information for us. Would you like to be on the agenda for our next meeting? Okay. And any comments or questions from the board?
Well, I'd like to suggest that they join by the other oyster farmers, because it's their way to oversight is that. As a Jason.
It's only fair.
And so I just got done doing the minutes, so it's fresh in my head, but so what you're saying is you do not want an extension to Scepter 1, Scepter 1 to move everything over to the deep water. Is that what you're saying to us?
He's out. He's out of there. He met, I believe he's all his gear is in the deep water now.
Okay,
Yeah, so no, we're beyond the extension. Now what he's looking for is to be able to use that shallow wintering site for year round, as you heard. And
Miss-
so process of that and is that,
Well,
would
I think-
DMF need to hear from us first? Can he get DMF here?
I think
Is it-
if you guys are gonna put that on your next agenda, I think we
Yeah.
can provide a document for everybody on what that process would look like, just so
And,
everybody.
and Mr. Chairman, he needs to provide that. And also, when we had this discussion a couple of weeks ago, there was lengthy pushback from the other growers as to
Yeah.
why this is not a good idea. So this needs to be a future agenda item with everybody to weigh in.
And
Well,
we can take care of notice for that.
and, you know, most of that pushback, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Franzuto, or anybody else that was at the meeting, was about, view shed from people on Poccuma Point. And, you know, I'd like to know a little more detail about that.
Well, there were two or three, well, there were, I'm sorry.
No,
There were
no,
2 or 3 questions. That was one of them.
Yes.
But then there was the other one in terms of the volume of paperwork and the application is much larger to have this approved
Yes,
by the state. And they were concerned that as part of that application process, what happens if sea life is found there and it shouldn't be used at all? And now everybody.
exactly.
So that's why I say they should be invited because we should get their, I'd like to hear all on that too. So there were
that's a good reminder, and now I
There's a
recall
there's
that.
a lot more to this.
right, and there was something else after the third one, but yeah,
They were worried they'd lose their sites.
they lose their sites, that's what they were worried about.
Short answer.
So anyway, so yeah, so it's gonna take a discussion.
Mr. Fitzgibbon?
Just a quick response to that. It's to my understanding that the DMF has already approved the overwintering site for grow out and that this is left to select board decision. So I don't understand the issue of the large stack of paperwork or what.
We just need evidence about that, really, I mean, somebody, we just need evidence of what is approved for.
I think if we're
That's-
gonna have a discussion at the next meeting, we will get all of
Yeah.
the steps and all of the
Good.
people and players that need to be here.
Because if that's the case, then.
And I know even
That's great.
Gabe from the DMF, who's the primary aquaculture person that the Division of Recreation has offered, if we need to have a discussion, then he may be able to be present as well and speak on behalf of the DMF, so we're not speculating or guessing. We can get
Right.
all of the people and players together for a discussion.
Good.
I'd like to, sorry. go ahead.
Scott?
I'd sent you an email, but I think you're on vacation. I'd like a list of everyone who has a lease.
Sure.
The name of the company and the individual on the lease. As well as, can you provide a map of everybody's location?
Yeah, we'll do
That
that
would be
all for the,
Very helpful to me to understand all some of this stuff, because
why don't,
some of it I can visualize and some of it I can't.
for the posted discussion, why don't we'll do a little, apologize for the terminology, like a little aquaculture primer of all of the spots and a little overview for all of those things, so everyone.
You want to say agriculture for dummies.
I
I
know.
know, I know it.
No,
Yeah, for me, and I think you just said this, I just wanted to follow up on this. I don't wanna hear from the leases what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed. to do. I wanna hear it from you and from DMF, because it's, then it's a crystal clear. And then there's no interpretation of, oh, I thought I could do this, but no, I can't do this. You're gonna give it to me in black and white, and then we can discuss
Yep.
what's allowed.
Thank you for that, Bob. That's perfect. Anybody else? Okay, does any board members see the reason to have another meeting in August? Thank you. Bob?
No,
Yeah.
I wanted to just bring up one thing when we're all done, but just, and this is for you, Tara. So I was talking with Andy, who's one of the day draggers, he fluke drags on this side of the harbor a lot. And he was telling me that up in the corner of, Tuckanut Shoal, where it makes the bend there, about 25 to 40 feet of water, he's getting a lot of scallops in his looking at, which has got 6-inch mesh. So I asked him, I said, would you bring some in for me so I can give them you to see? He said they're very dark shelled and they're very thick. He hasn't opened it and he just throws it back. So the next time he gets some, he said there's quite a few there actually. And it makes me think about the eastern fishery. They fish in 25 to 30 feet of water offshore. And I've always wondered about that corner up there. I've always wanted to go up there and throw a dredge, but the problem would be if we found scallops in there, there were any amount of them, we'd have to rewrite the shellfish regulations because you couldn't get them with a 40-pound dredge in 25, 30 feet of water. My friend, Tommy Smith, who fishes outside the Cape, uses basically a small sea scallop dredge, which is about 4 feet, with just a small rings. And he pulls it behind the boat, like our conch boat, your conch boat, and my boat.
Right.
But who knows, there might be a whole fishery there that we don't even know about, because if they're getting them in a 6-inch mesh.
I'm gonna check it out.
Do you remember the set they talked about of Mass Poison?
That's a
That's
poison.
poison,
Yeah.
poison.
And they still fish for
Yeah,
that fish.
33 feet.
And, I can't remember what year it was, but there was a year when we had an unbelievable set of scallops at 40th pole. And we fished there for almost 2 weeks. Probably maybe the 90s, I think, but they were beautiful scallops. They
What-
cut almost 10 pounds a box in there.
What corner are you talking about?
Mr. Chairman, I have to check out. I'm sorry.
Okay, Mr. Franzuto, thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
It would be in here. In that deep water. Cause they come down, those guys said that end of Tucker Shoal. Is got a lot of grass on the bottom end of it. They turn quick there because if they get in there, they get too much eelgrass in their nets. And they can't, then the net doesn't fish right. But he said, they've been telling me this for years, but he said this year he's been getting quite a few, so I thought it'd be interesting to give you some to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember in,
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
I remember in
They're big.
76, there was
That's super cool.
76, the majority of the fleet fished in the Carter Bay as well.
Yeah.
And until they fished them out and Mr. Fitzgibbon, is there anything else you'd like to request?
Just wanted to give you guys a heads up, I appreciate, listening,
It's,
really what I'm just hoping to attain, The other point I would like to ask also, now we have, Carlson present, has there been any motion towards the next 4 acres of deep water being made available for my use?
Yeah, we can definitely. do that.
That's really necessary.
Make that happen. for sure.
okay. And is there anything pressuring you that that would make you want to see us have another meeting this month? I don't think we've already voted not to, but we can readdress that.
No, I mean, I understand that any process to approve a new area or amend any kind of, situation as it stands, is gonna take a while. So it's just my hope is to get the ball rolling and go through the steps, if it's possible at all legally, to do it, by all legal compliance. 100%.
Okay.
I agree very much with what Bob is saying. I would like to equally understand from DMF, from NRD, from select board, because there's been a real lack of clarity, concerning, is this now bylaw, is this allowed by the DMF, is this something I heard or was told or something good? So there's really been a lack of transparency or clarification, so I agree 100%, Bobby, that could either stop this request in its tracks, and I would say, okay, thanks for your time, or it could be the answer to yes, we can progress with this. So, yeah, I think that's completely necessary, just to get some, valid confirmations.
Thank you. All right, anything else from the public tonight? Board members, anything else, anything you can think of you want on the agenda for our next meeting? Our next meeting is September 3rd, which is the day after Labor Day. Then after that, I see September 17th. And I believe, is that special town meeting day? Would you know,
Yeah, I
Jeff?
believe it is.
Yeah.
It is.
So once again, we land on a town meeting day, which happens just about all the time. So we should take that into consideration. And talk about that on September 3rd. So if there's nothing else tonight,
Motion to adjourn? Second.
motion's made by Mr. DeCosta to adjourn, seconded by Mr. Anderson. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor, Mr. DeCosta,
Yes.
Mr. Bossy,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson, Mr. Brace,
Aye.
chair votes aye as well. Good night, everyone. This meeting is adjourned.
Hopefully I just lost you before we.